There's a microphone that will pass amongst you if anyone has any questions.
Okay, question? Yeah. Sorry.
But far away if someone has a question.
There's someone at the back.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's hard for us to see you with these bright lights. Sorry about the lights in the auditorium, by the way. That's something that was a bit of a fault. But, sorry about that. They couldn't turn it down.
The bronzes that were shown, were they at the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge or the Ashmolean?
At the Fitzwilliam.
The Fitzwilliam. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, did I say the Ashmolean? I'm sorry, I apologise. You're right, it's the Fitzwilliam. Yes, there's a question. Yeah. Behind you.
Two questions. The Pietà, is that the Vatican Pietà?
It is. Yeah.
And this is probably a very silly question, but on bronzes, when the bronze is cooling, can you ever get a fingerprint of the artist? And would you know a Michelangelo fingerprint if you saw it?
I doubt anyone would touch a very hot bronze. No, well, I mean, all the moulding is all done pre-heating and anything, any sort of plaster casting and stuff. If you put a finger in the plaster cast, you might see it. You do see fingerprints in bronzes and stuff. I think Degas, Degas did all those wax dancers, and he actually hated bronzes, and he actually made the wax works to be waxworks. And he did leave his fingers in because he was pressing the wax and things like that. It was only when he died that his family thought, oh, these will make great bronzes. And so they turned them into bronzes. So all those Degas dancing, ballet dancing bronzes, he never intended for that. It is his work, but it was his family that actually organised. So you can see it if it's in wax, but Michelangelo very rarely signed his work, only the Pietà in the Vatican is the only one that's been signed, apparently.
And you would need more than one fingerprint across two works for you to think that's probably by the artist. I mean, one fingerprint could be anybody's.
Yeah. Yes, that's another question.
I was just wondering whether he did all his mathematical calculations for the architectural work, or did he work with an engineer at the time?
Most definitely, I think he worked with an engineer, because he was not a trained architect, but he had architectural. He was good. He was good at it. He could see. He had a design in mind and everything. But I'm pretty sure he did work with art. Bramante anyway was the person who designed the cupola, who did the church. In the end, he would say he was more engineer orientated. So I'm pretty sure he did.
But the same thing happens with Raphael and Leonardo. They're called upon to. They choose to, or they're called upon to have architectural designs and plans and military fortifications, and Raphael's involved in St. Peter's, and they were across all these arts in an extraordinary way.
It's interesting, the Laurentian staircase for the Laurentian Library, when you actually see it, it is a really compressed space. We tried it obviously because we're trying to show the whole sculptural space, but it's basically the stairs come down and almost finish at that wall where you see the columns. So there's where do you go? It feels extremely sculptural when you're in the space. So he has that eye for sculpted space, and the staircase is a way of navigating through space. And so there is this element of the sculptor rather than an architectural design. You really do get a sense that a sculptor made these stairs.
Hello. Yes. Did you come across while making the documentary the destroyed Michelangelo in Spain during the Civil War? The Saint John the Baptist?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. Just wondered. I mean, it has been what remains have been restored in Florence for 20 years, but it's only 60% left.
Oh,
okay.
yeah. It's interesting, you know, how things have survived. I was just looking at the drawings in the exhibition up here. I said, they're amazing that this paperwork, which is quite fragile, has actually survived for such a long time. And even the delicacy of his touch is just incredible, the delicacy of his touch and drawing and things like that. I mean, obviously we were very privileged that we were at Windsor Castle when we looked at those drawings from the Royal Collection, and because we were there, we could get very close, and they weren't behind glass or anything like that. So when you see it for real, it's just incredible. His technique, his touch is amazing. So I think it was Tanya Kovacs, the artist, who talked about his touch, and it really is magical when you see it.
That library in Windsor Castle, the person that we were with said, you know, Elizabeth I would have walked along here, pulling out books.
Yeah.
Something.
The thing I love about making these films is we do go to some magical places, some interesting sort of locations and things like that. And that time in the library there was fabulous. We didn't just look at the Michelangelos, we pulled out the Leonardos, we had looked at all sorts of things. It was fabulous, really good. Any more questions at all? Yes, just here.
While the microphone's coming to you, our next season will be 3 films. The Van Gogh exhibition from the National Gallery, a film about the exhibition that's currently on in Paris called Paris 1874, the birth of Impressionism. But also we're going to encore this film. And I was thinking during the film, I'm going to just have a black poster with the greatest artist of all time, ? Exhibition on screen, you know, and the date. Because there is something about these, because, you know, you start with this block of marble and it's reductive. You know, when you, as said in the film, once you take something away, you can't put it back. I mean, you know, we've made plenty of films about the Manets and the Van Goghs and the Renoirs, and who can scrape away and start again. I mean, the Pietà has got to be among the most extraordinary acts of human creativity ever, in my opinion.
I mean, you can't see behind it because we didn't get access to go behind it, but it's sort of basically, it is a full 3D volume of every single detail is completely considered. It is a piece of conjuring in marble. It's just spectacular. Yes?
Yes, an absolute stunning film. Thank you very much indeed. And having been to the Vatican and seen that,
Yes.
to actually see it so close and that
Yes.
detail is fantastic. And I just wondered if, when you were doing your research and looking at Vasari, does he say how long it took him to do that? Did he have someone who helped him do the polishing? Are those details in Vasari?
Not necessarily in Vasari, I don't think. I can't remember that sort of detail. But he usually did all the work, and he maybe had one assistant or so. He liked it. He was a bit of a control freak. He liked to do it all himself. He was a young 25-year-old, you know, he probably had all the energy and everything to do that. And as it also in the film, he liked to go and select the marble as well. Go to Carrara, which is some distance to get the marble from Carrara down to Rome or to Florence or where this was carved. But I thought it was interesting, you know, the idea that he polished it, that gave that polishing look, you know.
You think he might have had someone to do that part for him. But
Possibly.
But the time factor that it takes to do that sort of work, one can't imagine how much one can put into a life.
Well, the carver, the sculptor who was doing the marble carving, I mean, he is a real marble carver from that studio. He just so happens to look a little bit like Michelangelo, which was fabulous. But talking to him, he gets commissioned by artists to make their sculptural work out of marble. So they'll come with a design or a little maquette, and he would then scale it up and then carve the whole thing on his own out of marble. So, excuse me, it does happen. There is that solitary idea of the master craftsman. Yeah.
But isn't it amazing that there is this one hill in northwestern Italy that produces this perfectly white stone, which is ideal for sculpting, and yet survives, 500 years and hopefully many more.
Well, it's served the Italian. There are other places like in Turkey and stuff where they have similar sort of marble and things. I think we have a question in the middle here.
I don't have a question. I
Yes.
just wanted to say thank you. That was overwhelming.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I appreciate it. Any more questions? Oh yes, one up the hill. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. I was wondering what was the most surprising thing you learned about Michelangelo as you were going through this process of making this film?
Well, for me, I was shocked when someone told me that the Pietà had been made out of one piece of marble when I'd seen it. But I found his poetry kind of interesting. I hadn't really clocked that part of his life before. And it's interesting poetry. It's not the greatest poetry on earth, but it was a side of him that I think he was nervous about. But basically, I found it quite interesting. I always find it interesting to be able to read what artists actually write. That's why I was fascinated by the thought that there were so many letters I could read, but not all of them actually talked about practice. A lot of it, like I said before, was just complaining that someone hadn't delivered the shirts on time or something. And but it does give you an insight into his relationship with his writings, into his relationship with the papacy and Italian society. He was a bit of a rebel. I mean, at that time, there's a couple of shots in the basement of a church that we were very privileged to go in and see, and there's Michelangelo drawings all over the walls. And it used to be hidden and the public couldn't go in there, but they can now. If you go to Florence, it's worth going to have a visit. It's really magical, but that's where he hid for a lot of the time. So that was another surprising element where people would say, "Oh, we have the vault where he hid," and I said, "Really? Can we go and see it?" He said, "Well, it's not open to the public, but you can go and have a look." And it was fantastic. So that's a privilege that we get sometimes, and it was fantastic.
When I was younger, I remember watching The Agony and the Ecstasy. And I remember at the time, and I watched it again not so long ago, and the beginning of it for a Hollywood film was really strange because it's actually a documentary that starts this feature film. I've never seen anything like it before or since. But even that film, and then even going to the Sistine Chapel, I'd never really appreciated the Sistine. When I actually went, there's such a long queue, and you're pushed and kind of shoved through. It's overwhelming. And one of the points of exhibition on screen, if you like, is to encourage you to look. One of the reasons that we do it for the cinema primarily is because, having worked in television for 30 odd years, I know they wouldn't allow us to kind of linger on artworks in the way that or they wouldn't want us to linger on artworks in the way that we want to. And David's film, I remember that the first time I saw a cut where you had that long track along the ceiling, for me, I suddenly just got it. It's like, this is unbelievable. So for me, it was taking a closer look and really appreciating the extraordinary ambition and then the execution of firstly the Sistine Chapel and then the last.
I mean, that was always a bit of a challenge to get a sense that you're actually looking up. So I hope it came across that way, but because it's essentially when you see, when you look up, there is this sort of, your eye follows around, there's a slight distortion, then you see something and then it leads on to another thing. So it's sometimes quite difficult to get that across in film, but hopefully that works for the Sistine Chapel.
If you ever go to the V&A and see some of their Raphael tapestries, then just to give you a sense, at the bottom of the chapel would have been
all full of those
tapestries. All the tapestries. Extraordinary place.
Yeah.
Just to say, to conclude, if you do want to, then on the way out there are some DVDs, as I mentioned, from another film called The Lost Temple of Java, which is about raffles and which seemed appropriate today, being the British Museum, and the Lost Temple of Java, i.e. Borobudur. There are some fridge magnets, there's some brochures about all our films, which you can see at 7th-art.com if you want to watch any of the previous films, or just sign up to the newsletter and you'll find out when the next films are coming out. As I mentioned, next week we have My National Gallery, which I thoroughly recommend. And again, we'd like to thank the British Museum for this opportunity to show the film. Thank you very much.
Thank you.